Hey there, Ryan Kingsline here. Now, I want to take another look at ZBrush from a real non-traditional perspective. See if we can trace a feature all the way back to glorious clay. And why don't we pick the clay brush? Because it does trace all the way back to clay. When the developers were thinking about it, they were thinking about clay. And this idea that if you're sculpting in the real world or in digital, doesn't matter, right? You should be able to take clay and brush that on no matter what's underneath it. So if I wanted to fill in an area, like if I wanted to fill this area in between the breast and the rib, I should be able to have a piece of clay and within seconds do that. That was not possible before the clay brush, but today with the clay brush, filling that stuff in, super easy. But it goes more than that, because the clay brush, when you're working it inside of ZBrush, it's designed for you to kind of, how do I say it? It's designed for you to use it like you use this. So in order to really illustrate it, let me show you how I use this wooden tool in a similar way that in ZBrush I use the clay tool. The first thing I do is I put a little bit of clay on the wooden tool. This is like a brush in ZBrush having some Z intensity or depth already to it. So what I do is I'll come in here and let's just say, let's build this 8th rib. Right now this form has been grossly simplified and we need to establish the 8th rib so we can really establish some of the beauty of the rib cage in there. Okay. Now I've got clay on it. I'm going to put the clay in, okay, and then I'm going to rub it in. This last stroke I just did is the equivalent of using a smooth brush. Pressing shift. So here I am, I'm dabbing that in, I'm putting this swash of clay this way, I'm using my pressure, so like a Wacom with pressure sensitivity to push it there. I'm going to now start to use Alt to push that in a little bit. I'm using the ZBrush terminology here in the real world because it applies. When you learn ZBrush, you are learning to sculpt. You can take the same lessons that you learn and apply those to real-world clay, much like I'm doing. You put a little bit of clay on there, you bring this around. Now, this is a wooden tool. It's crazy simple, but there's about 10 different ways for me to use this. Let me just go over some of the ways, and then we're going to come back to this idea of the clay brush. So one of the ways I use it is I use the tip. And I'll use it to kind of define a point. The other way is I'll use the tip plus the curve. So I'll be coming in and let's say I'm going to start to define this a little bit and then I'm going to dig in a little bit. Okay? And then I'm going to come in here and say start to integrate this pubic area. And you know, this is really just the best area for the form. Let's come over here to the Tensor Fasciae Latae. Separate the Tensor Fasciae Latae from the gluteus medius, from the fat pad and the vastus lateralis. So what I can do is, instead of using the tip, I use this curved part, and I'm going to use this almost like you would a loop. I'm digging in. So I just dig in, and then I dig in a little bit more. But now what I'll do is I'll dig in, and then I rotate this. So I'm digging in and then I'm rotating this to kind of flatten and start to round the form out. That's now 3 ways for me, 4 ways for me to use what's really just a simple piece of wood. Pull this in, shoom. Pull that in, shoom. So I'm digging and then I flip and round and now I'm pulling down. I'm digging, I flip, I'm rounding, and now I'm pulling down. And that means that in one stroke, I have dug form out, and then I have integrated and rounded form. So I've done multiple things. That's what ZBrush does. That's where it's going. That's what it's aiming for, is for your Wacom, your stylus, to be as simple as this, but with as much power as this. This is the most powerful tool I have. There are other tools. There are loop tools. There's this metal shin thingy. This is really good for rounding and integrating and shaving off form. But This is power. So as I'm coming in here, I'm seeing this. Let's see. Now I need to use my /3, talking ZBrush here, just to start to define some things. And then I'll come in with the clay brush and just start to establish a little bit of planar qualities. Get that anterior superior iliac spine there. And start to round all of that out. Now, again, using the clay brush, putting the clay on and integrating it by pressing Shift, or with the clay brush, what you do is you press Alt and you'll put it down and then you press Alt to kind of cut and paste it around. So as I'm pressing down on this, I am doing the equivalent in ZBrush of pressing Alt, which is so easy to do, right? So external oblique. Let's get that rib here. So how am I going to do this? I need to be able to, you see now I'm just using the flat of this, and I'm using that to help me start to establish that 10th rib and 8th rib as it flows down and around. And this is all stuff you do inside of ZBrush, largely with the clay brush or clay buildup or clay tubes, sweeping through there. And it's because of that algorithm that it's built with. It's designed in such a beautiful way to start to imitate this process. So a little bit more to get a sense of that 8th rib in there. And I need to make this a little bit straighter. There we go. Start to create the down plane and then start to get a sense of the abdominals and these guys moving down and in to this whole equation. When you work in ZBrush, you are in so many ways working in clay. So many ways. All right, just a touch more. Drop out for the 10th rib, flatten that a tiny bit, and then go from there. Now we could do things like take a loop tool, and you start to draw your lines, and you start to separate the ribs, and then you can kind of come in and drag these across it to kind of start to integrate them a little bit. You can also be integrating in this way with this metal shin. You can integrate in so many ways. You can use a brush. You can use a brush like this, right? And we just come in and we just, okay? Or we could use another tool. We could use literally fire to warm this. This is for your creme brulee. And what that does is warm it so that I can kind of come in here and start to soften that form. This is harder to create nice surfaces. You have to, it's for a higher level of staging. So mine's really rough right here, but you can see it starts to create some really nice simplifications of form. Some of which you get also by using, say, a loop tool. So this is powerful, although now starting to eat away a little bit. So let's put that back. And then when you're using this kind of fire, this is a lot like using the smooth brush with a low intensity on a high resolution model. So you divide your model really, really high, so it's got lots of polygons in there and it's really dense, and then you start to smooth that out, or you use some kind of polish brush or H-polish, for example. H-polish is another really good brush for doing this kind of thing on this level. So, just start to sweep that in and just get the movement. So now I'm focusing on this area. I would be focusing all over the map on it, but the real goal for me here is to show you how we work in a digital world, or I should say in a traditional way here, but all of these tools have evolved in ZBrush into a digital world. So again, working in a real world, physical world here, but this is all the inspiration of ZBrush. This is what ZBrush came from, and in so many ways has evolved to in its digital incarnation inside of ZBrush. So I hope you give me the chance to teach you more in the ZBrush certification program. I look forward to sharing everything I know about ZBrush. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.